We have the female in urban areas. We have people, living, or the females living in skyscrapers and also slums. Their experience is also different. When you go to a medical shop, which is based on rationality and logic, we are talking about advancement of science and technology. The menstrual hygienic products are covered in wrappers and papers. Why? There is lack of social acceptability. There is lack of socialization. The lack of internalization of the new logical means that it is okay. It is a natural phenomenon. It is a biological one. Secrecy and silence, that is nothing but the silent revolution that every girl faces, which ultimately is a barrier to the gender parity in society and workplace and also the educational institutions. This is what we talk about, right? The segregation and rigidity and the social control is more even in the upper caste sections. Okay, they undergo that ritual process, and this shame, prohibits them to discuss this openly and take the assistance or for better hygienic practices. So that's a great problem or a major issue why they face the reproductive issues or health segregations. Okay, so this is nothing but another reflection of persistence of patriarchy in family and society. So this direction given by Supreme Court and all the efforts to be made by the educational and workforce organizations is definitely a welcome step to bring about gender parity. Let's read the news. Supreme Court declares that right to menstrual health is a fundamental right. Now think of your OPSC syllabus. Is it relevant for us? Menstrual health. Which aspect of your syllabus coincides with this piece of news? Let's first understand what the news was all about. Then we'll begin understanding what is it all about. So the Supreme Court has declared that menstrual health and hygiene and management of it in schools is an integral part of the right to life and dignity under Article 21. That is part of your fundamental right, which is automatically enforceable by the medium and mechanisms of law and the law of the land, that is the Constitution. Right? So that ensures the dignity and autonomy, means the lack of menstrual health and management measures forces the students into menstrual poverty, subjected them to stigma and humiliation. So now comes the interesting part. What is menstrual poverty? We have heard about multidimensional poverty. Menstruation occurs to every female despite of the class boundaries, despite the class, caste, racial segregation and background. Right? All the women are faced with a similar biological natural phenomenon. But what about the experience of it? I'm not talking about the natural cycle or phenomenon. I'm not talking about the pain or the physical pain or the psychological upheaval that a female undergoes in that particular time frame. I'm talking about the requirements which are mostly met by the economic standards. That is nothing but your class, status and position in the society. Do all the women have the equal access to their menstrual hygiene? No. Mostly it is shaped and recognized by your economic standing, whether you belong to the upper class, whether you belong to your elite class, or whether you are below poverty line. Your class position, your class standing and your status determines what quality of menstrual hygienic products you are going to use on a regular basis. When people are struggling to get the basic requirements, okay, be it food, be it housing, or be it even clothing. So when it comes to menstrual hygiene, then it is an aspect of privilege. Don't you think? Something which is a basic requirement of all the females. So it amounts to stigma and humiliation, something which is created not because of her incapability, but because of the structural issue. The stigma and humiliation is nothing but a cultural perception. It is not naturalized. It is not socialized. It is not an internalized value. Do people or do the parents at home, mostly in the traditional orthodox society, sit across a dining table and discuss about menstrual status of a girl, let alone the menstrual hygiene? Don't you think it should be a part of your primary socialization which takes place at home? Yes, absolutely. So, to whom can a girl confer this problem to? The female, the mother? Okay. And what if she is not economically independent? So, mostly that becomes a structural issue. Even if a female is educationally empowered, she might not be socially or economically empowered, which eventually leads to menstrual poverty. The experience is differing according to differing standing in the social background and the position. Think of a tribal girl who is living in an isolated hamlet. So whatever is, prevailing across generation, she is bound to follow that. Now think of a girl in a rural hamlet or settlement in isolated belts of Chambal Ghati. So whatever economic and material and physical resources she will be subjected to, then she will be availing to that. Okay, have you heard the story of Padman? So it was nothing but a battle of access to equality, equality to access menstrual hygiene, to make it democratic, to make it equitable, to make it cheaper, so that it reaches to every door. So it violates their bodily autonomy and also their privacy. So there used to be a time, okay, when female, mostly even the newlywed bride, they were asked to step outside of their house, even if the pallu or the veil is up to this much. They had to go out and go for open defecation, isn't it? So it used to be a part of cultural norm that the washroom should not be inside the house, because of, again, the segregation and the discrimination between purity and pollution, a prevailing cultural norm in the traditional society. So up until recently, by the efforts of the state, and obviously because of some enlightened people and reformed people, we have started integrating the washroom inside the house. We talk about the dignity of a household lies with the dignity of a female. So when we are not giving her any autonomy to choose her own life partner, we are not giving her any option and choices whether she wants to continue her higher studies, but in the same manner, we are compelling her to step outside the house and in open she has to defecate, let alone the hygiene. And the situation becomes even deplorable and exploitative at the time of menstrual cycle. Isn't it a violation on their privacy? Yes. So the first and foremost impact is manifested in the form of barrier to education. As we talk about, the maximum dropouts among the girls takes place in the higher secondary level. The phrase where maximum female undergo the initiation of menstrual cycle, right? So the absence of sanitary facilities create the gender specific barriers. It's not a problem for a male child, is it? A male child can openly either defecate or urinate. That is absolutely accepted, that is absolutely normalized and socialized. There is no onus of shame upon them. But can a girl, does she have the equal rights and freedom to do so? Character assassination will take place. Okay, if not that, then it's a direct threat to her social image, yes, definitely, but what else? Her physical security itself. She will be exposed to rape and physical abuse. So it compels the girls to choose between either the dignity and the education. And everybody of us know who wins. It is the dignity, where maximum, importance and significance in a traditional household is given to the dignity of a woman. Ghar ki naak katwa di, if you go for intercaste marriages. So every responsibility, even endogamy, and the responsibility lies on the girl and the mother. Okay, anyway, now let's come back. So that eventually leads to maximum dropouts. So when it comes to the initiatives by the state and the role of community in education, can we integrate this piece of news? Yes. The state responsibility. The state cannot force a child to make this choice. Lack of resources is no excuse for denying the autonomy of privacy. If somebody is poor, you cannot blame the person to be poor. Be it the generational inequality of wealth that she is into such position. But why will she be denied the right to equal access to education? Just because she is not able to afford the menstrual hygiene or even the pad, which will eventually lead to her own stigma and humiliation in public. Is she responsible for this? No. So in this structural gap, who should come to aid? It is the state. So now it is the responsibility of the state and the institutions to take care of these issues, at least in the educational institutions. So this is all about bringing in gender parity in education and eventually in the public institutions and organizations with the help of the state. So what is the role of men? As I always say, in India, the forebearers or forerunners of feminism is not from the female sections. It is taken care by the male. The father of Indian Renaissance is no one but Raja Rammohun Roy, who fought the battle of Sati. It was Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar who eventually led to the Widow Remarriage Act. So they were our ancestry. And to bring about this reformation, we again need the support and cooperation of such reformed and enlightened men. Right? So they emphasize the need to sensitize the male teachers and students to prevent the harassment and stigma. So now we are talking about the cultural change, the social transformations which can only be brought about by a change in the thinking and mindset of the community. It is okay when a patch of blood is there in the back of the skirt of a girl. It is okay for a colleague, or it is okay for a for another male student to help her cooperate to assist her to go to the washroom and later on provide a pad. So let's first start normalizing it. And how can this be normalized? Through two processes: socialization and an internalization of a new value that will alternatively bring about social transformation and social change, which can lead to terminate this problem of structural barrier, or let's say the menstrual poverty. It is not just the state, but also a reformation in the mindset, a reformation in the cultural value and the prevailing social norms among the society, and mostly in the male counter or male domains. So direction issued by Supreme Court, mandatory facilities, that is all schools, whether it is government or private. Very interesting, because mostly all the elite or all the expensive provisions are usually given in the private sectors, right? Be it the schools also. So now the provision or direction is also given to the government sectors, right? And it is equivalently implemented both in the rural and the urban areas. As we see, maximum female dropouts in the higher secondary level takes place in the rural government schools. So this is the foremost and important initiative taken by the state agency to bring about this reformation in gender parity. Okay, by which we can ensure equal access to all the students despite any segregation or discrimination on the basis of gender. So it must have functional gender segregated toilets. Mostly you find that there is dysfunctional manageable toilets, and sometimes because of the lack of economic resources, even it is not segregated. So there is again question on the privacy of the female students. And also we are talking about the teachers, female teachers. As we discussed in the first phase of our class, menstrual cycle is equivalently faced by all the females despite their social, economic or political backgrounds. Accountability. Now we are bringing the check and balance, right? So all the government schools, state held that, are accountable for the non-compliance with the Right to Education Act under Section 19. So now we are talking about the way forward to this problem. So again, another aspect and dimension in your syllabus which talks about the role of state in imparting education. Okay, educational inequality is another dimension in your syllabus to which you can integrate this piece of news. So private schools, they will also face derecognition for their non-compliance. So we are making strict rules. The penalty or the punishment will eventually lead to their de-evaluations. There is carrot and there is also stick. So we are encouraging at one point of time to bring about reformation, and if not, then लातों के भूत बातों से नहीं मानते. So for that we have the stick with the stringent rules and regulations. Let's talk extensively about the menstrual poverty. So there is something called intersectionality and social stratification. So when it comes to the hierarchy of inequality and discrimination and segregation, it is not just targeted towards a particular class or caste. Okay, it has interdimensional effect. The access to menstrual health is unevenly distributed along intersecting axis of inequality. So there is an overlap between caste and class here. Okay, and we can also talk about ethnicity and race, because we can also include the issues faced by the tribal women. And as I told you, again, tribal women are also unevenly distributed across India. We have women in Northeast who are economically well off than that of the isolated tribes in Andaman and Nicobar Island. So think of their situation. Caste and class. In India, women from Dalit, Adivasi and even the lower income groups. See, when I talk about lower income groups, there can be any class, any caste. Lower income group means it can be a Brahmin girl. It can be a non-Brahmin dominant caste member girl. It can be a SC girl, it can be ST, or it can belong to any OBC category. So they suffer disproportionately. Okay, so national data shows that while 86% of the dominant caste groups have access to hygienic products, this drops to 75 to 78% for scheduled caste and scheduled tribes. And on reality, you may not find marginal difference, only 10%. But what is the 10% of India's population? Now imagine the magnitude and the stretch of data. Marginalized identities, the experience of period poverty uniquely burdens the transgenders, the intersex and the non-binary individuals. Now we are talking about the gender minority section of Indian society. They have near about marginal or even non-existing access to this, because they are also trapped in the vicious circle of poverty and indebtedness. The reason why you find maximum transgender beggars on road is because they have no economic alternatives. Even if they have access to education, there are very little scopes for them to be integrated into the workforce, let alone formal or organized form of economy. Even despite they have skills, education, they are not integrated to the formal workforce where they find all the form of security and economic empowerment, who are often excluded from gender blind public policies and face heightened safety risk in public washrooms. Again, there comes another dimension of exposure to physical abuse and rape, even by the transgenders. So whenever, as a sociology student, you are writing this kind of answer, take every dimension, take every sector, and be empathetic when you write the issues. Understand the issue. Then only you will be able to fetch or compose a good multi-dimensional answer. Menstruation is frequently framed as impure or dirty or even polluting. We are all aware of the Sabarimala case, right? Only a particular section of or aged girl, that is from 15 to 49, I think. Okay, so the age gap where, or the age group in which mostly the female undergoes menstruation. So they were denied the access to enter to Sabarimala temple, right? So we have struck down that, right? So due to patriarchal values that prioritize male-centric biological norms. So now we are talking about essentialism. There's something called natural biological inequality. Physically, both the male and female, they are different. But now we are talking about the social construction of the gender. We are talking about the inequalities or the uneven experience by both the male and the female counterparts. So the solution to this problem is also social in nature. Stigma and shame, the cultural taboos enforces secrecy and silence, leading to paired shames where the individuals suffer from silence rather than seeking the help. So women are also fighting a silent revolution within themselves and also within the community because of the social shame, taboo and stigma, and the fear of getting humiliated. Now integrate this aspect to the issues of IMR and MMR. Because of the lack to good menstrual hygiene, mostly post childbirth, different female experience differently because they undergo bleeding, continuous bleeding. That is another pertaining factor which leads to maximum maternal mortality death. So there's something called pink tax. What is pink tax? Interesting. This is nothing but a reflection of economic disparity where the products marketed to women are more expensive and specifically taxed is seen as a form of systematic gender operations. If we are assigning a certain degree of tax, let's make it tax free. Can the government do it? Yes. But if we categorize this as expensive luxury item, then don't you think that is again being coupled up with all the existing inequalities upon the women? It's a natural biological essential factor for all the female. Don't you think the women belonging to lower caste and lower class who come in the lower bracket of economic structure face the maximum marginalization through this? So we are systematically debarring them to avail the product. They are given with no option but to follow the unhygienic methods. So let's understand this from the structural functionalist perspective and the existing social exclusions. From a functionalist point of view, the institutions like schools and workplaces fail to fulfill their roles when they lack the infrastructure to support the menstruating individuals. We talk about gender parity in workforce, be it organized or unorganized or informal work. Do we have equal infrastructure? Do we provide them with the equal opportunity to contribute their maximum efforts and efficiency in the workplace? No. Does a male worker and a female worker experience the same burden? No. They are faced with the completion of task. 3 hours mein you have to complete this task, but the female is undergoing menstruation and she has no infrastructure, no washroom to even change. So we are also challenging her with structural barriers. It's not just a question on efficiency. It is not just a question on merit and achievement. Though equivalently capable, she is unable to provide maximum productivity to the workforce because of the structural inequality in the workforce. Now let's talk about educational disruption. As we already know, this is about the maximum dropouts in the higher secondary levels, lack of functional restrooms, products. It causes millions of girls, mostly in a report it was estimated to be 23 million girls who annually in India drop out or miss significant school time, creating long-term educational and economically segregation. Now imagine a girl who stops going to schools. Now she doesn't have literacy level, right? Thus no skills, thus no jobs. Again trapped in poverty, vicious circle of poverty. This is nothing but another manifestation of feminization of poverty. So not only she, but her daughter, her granddaughter and generations to come will also be trapped in the vicious circle of poverty. Yes. So cut out the problem, recognize, identify, and put the solution to the problem in the first step itself. Will bring about transformation in educational institution, which will bring about transformation in the workplace, again in the society. Social exclusions, menstruating individuals are often excluded from kitchens, from temples, we have seen in the case of Sabrimala, and also all the communal spaces, reinforcing their subordinate status in the social hierarchies. Somebody, some group, be it elites, be it the patriarchy in the family or society, they are determining what a girl should and should not do in her menstrual time. So that means the control, the decision making and the authority upon her body, upon the action of the individual, that is the female, lies in the patriarchal structure, who determines all this culture, traditions and social norms of the subordinate secondary position of the female. Because of purity, because of pollution, because of the unhygienic practices associated with menstruation, she is denied the access or to enter the schools, the temples, and let alone any auspicious rituals. So this is again how the family exert control, or the society exerts social control on the individual females. There's also the reinformation of patriarchy in the form of religion and rituals, which is also manifested in the form of menstrual poverty. Where will she get a chance to voice the need for the access to good menstrual hygiene in all these circumstances? Tell me, is it possible? No. So this menstrual poverty is also called the period poverty. It is not just a lack of money, but the lack of social capital and the rituals status. Sometimes the reinforcement of a structure of patriarchy. The patriarchy in the domestic sphere, that is the family, and also the society and the community. Yes. And I haven't even discussed the stigma and the humiliation of the menstruating females across different religions. Islam, Hindus, Jains. Again in Jains we have Digambar and Swetambar. So many sects, so many religion and so many cultures, so many traditions. Each reinforcing a form of social control over women because of this natural biological phenomenon. She is attributed the status of polluting or dirty, reinforcing the cycle of segregation and discrimination. The society thus are engaged in the social construction of gender, and society determines the way of life, the attitude, norms, and every value related to gender ascribed roles, status and position of the female in the household and thus the society. So let's talk about the tribal or the ST disparity, attributed mostly because of just geographical isolation. Yes, this also stands true for all those regions which are not on the same parity as the developed areas. We are talking about the rural societies. Okay, we are talking about the third tier, second tier cities. Okay, for example, you were sitting in the capital city, right? You order some products online and it gets delivered to you in doorsteps in 10 minutes. What about the female in Sundargarh? What about the female in Koraput? What about the girl in Malkangiri? So there lies the uneven experiences and structural inequalities differingly in Indian society. Okay, so Dalit women and tribal women who are already structurally marginalized as impure in the traditional hierarchy, the menstrual taboos create double burden of stigma. So when you talk about gender issues, can we integrate this? Yes. Okay, so often excluded from the communal water resources. Now I am talking about the India pre-independence, and in the 90s and 70s, it used to be a ground reality, a social reality in the traditional Orthodox Indian society. Though we have come a great step forward, but I'm sure there must be some unnoticed, unheard of, hamlets across India who might be still reinforcing such segregated, discriminatory practices up against their female citizens, isn't it? Yes. Now let's talk about the associated structural violence. The state and the society fails to provide the basic water and sanitation. It is not just about pad. It is also about their hygiene, which comes with equal access to water and sanitation. Now let's talk about the time when the social reformers were fighting the battle of gender discrimination and caste-based movements. Be it Ambedkar, be it any other such great social reformers. When Dalits were denied the entry or the access to the public tanks or the water resources, just imagine the deplorable condition of the Dalit females at that point of time, just 100 years back. Where will the hygiene come from? And imagine the status and condition of the newly made mothers. And thus there was a great significant number associated with maternal mortality rate, isn't it? Okay. So which violently impacts the health of the poor, mostly the female poor, right? Social exclusion, the practice of forbidding women from kitchens to temples during periods which is more rigid in certain caste and class pockets. Mostly जितना upper caste होगा, segregation and ritual prohibition उतना ज़्यादा होगा. Always remember. The rigidity when it comes to the social segregation of the females are higher in the upper caste. Okay, Devdasi dichotomy, right? So the lower caste female are encouraged to go out, step out, work at home and also go out, earn and contribute in the economic expenditure of a household. But when it comes to the female, mostly they are the symbol of dignity and honor. So they put on the veil like this, up to this. And they are trapped inside the four walls of domestic sphere. So rigidity bhi utna zyada hoga unke liye. Okay. Then pink tax, as we discussed, is nothing but the economic burden placed on women for the products they can't opt out, which hits the class of poor the hardest. We talk about retrogressive and progressive tax, right? GST is what? Progressive or retrogressive? Similarly, you are compelling the female to invest in something which is natural. So for an upper class lady, it won't be a lot, but when you are asking the such huge amount, it will hurt the highest or it will hurt hard to the lower class woman, isn't it? Let's talk about intersectionality. It was given by Crenshaw, okay, who talks about the intersection of class, caste and gender. Okay, sociologists like Sharmila Rege, who work with Dalit feminism, would argue that Dalit women's experience of menstrual poverty is different from that of a Brahmin woman's. We have already discussed this, right? Observations made by her, the Dalit woman face three aspects or dimension: class, that is her economic status. The poverty-ridden Dalit woman faces the maximum stereotype and stigma and humiliation. Caste, ritual segregation, and gender, where patriarchy as a structure parallelly impacts this intersectional of inequality of menstrual women. So this intersection makes her the most vulnerable to the school dropouts and reproductive health issues. So we are discussing the gender issues of the dropout girls in school and also the reproductive health of the newly made mom. This also risks the high mortality rate in India. Two major social issues integrated with menstrual poverty. We have already discussed this number: 23 million girls drop out annually from schools because of this prevailing social stigma and humiliation. So let's understand the economic implications. This menstrual hygiene and the poverty is manifested in systematic absenteeism. Girls miss out on an average 5 to 8 days of school each month, that is during the menstrual cycle itself. Learning gap, the cumulative loss of 10 to 20% of the school year leads to academic failure, eventually resulting in permanent dropouts. When the girls in the rural areas or the isolated hamlets are not exposed to informations, are not literate enough, they are already missing out schools. Okay, they will eventually perform weakly. So when they join, let alone they survive this, school age and they join the workforce, again due to lack of institutional support and infrastructure, again they are prone to public humiliation and stigma. So the productivity of the female labor force will definitely be lesser for something which is natural. It's not a question of merit, capability or achievement. It is a structural problem which lies in the society. This is a very important data which must be there in your answers when it comes to dropout rates of girls. Mostly states like Bihar, we find 20.5%. In Assam, it is 20.3%, have dropout rates significantly higher than the national average. So which are the states? It's Bihar and Assam, which are still regarded as traditional. So the social norms, control is mostly rigid than rest of the mainstream Indian society, right? So this dropout rates among the girls is low in states like Manipur, Himachal Pradesh, which show the best retention rates for girls in the country. Mostly we know that in Himachal Pradesh, it is inhabited by the mountainous tribal groups, right? So when it comes to tribal, not all the tribal girls face the exclusion. Some are well off, some are not. So it is not necessary all the tribal women face the segregation. It is not necessary all the Brahmin women are well off. It is not necessary that the Dalit, that is all the Dalit face the same exclusion. There are certain creamy layer elite people who take the advantage of reservation in education and employment who are well off than few of the tribal groups or few of the even dominant caste or even the Brahmin females. So it is not a uniform experience and the structural inequality impacts differently to different section of women. This is very interesting concept which is given by William F. Ogburn. He talks about the concept of cultural lag. The society, the technology, the information is accelerated right? But the society is not running on the parallel pace to adopt those technologies, those changes, which results in the cultural lag. The material technology like modern sanitary products progresses, but non-material cultures like the social attitude and taboos remain stuck in the past. One of the reasons why there was open defecation is because of the cultural lag. So now we are aware of the rationality, the logic and the fact behind integrating the toilets into the main household. But because of the prevailing traditional cultural norms, because of purity and pollution and so many other cultural norms, people continued open defecations. So there are availability of so many hygienic products, but because of the underlying taboos or because of lack of information and literacy among the females, they retain or continue in the backward practices. So this gap prevents people from utilizing the available resources due to deep-seated cultural embarrassment. So the society is not able to catch up with a technological or material advancement in the same rate. So when we talk about gender issues, can we integrate all of this? Can we integrate the aspect of the role of state in imparting equal education and to curtail down the structural barrier and the educational inequality in Indian society? Yes. So each and every topic in the society is not isolated. It has to be interviewed and analyzed in the form of integrated manner, in overlapping manner. And then only you'll be able to form a multidimensional answer, catering to the needs and problems and issues and grievances of differing women and differing gender problems, which varies unevenly between caste, class, and even racial and ethnic groups.